Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So that's a very good introduction. The rest of the talk is all about how to launch a product. How many of you have launched a product at least once in your career? A few hands. At least 5 times? At least 10? Wow, so we got a couple of veterans. And how many of you are founders? Okay. How many of you are with engineering background or own the title engineering? Okay. So some of this might be relatively new for people who have never launched a product. Don't get overwhelmed. Some of this might be repetitive if you've done product launches in the past. Any product managers or product marketing managers? Okay, quite a few. Yeah. So to start with, what does a product launch actually mean? It's like, any other startup or anything else you do in the life. The instructions can be simple, super simple, but a lot of detail is what you want to focus on. And it's never completely done until you actually do it yourself. We'll talk about a framework. We'll also have a workshop where we'll give you some papers to fill, and you can think about your product launch. As I'm going through the session, what I want you to think about is your existing product portfolio or the set of features you're working on that you want to launch sometime in the near future. The next month, the next quarter, or later this year. And we can keep this interactive. Feel free to ask any questions. So it's pretty low key. The first thing that I want to get off the table, mainly for engineers and people who have never launched a product, is a product launch is different from the feature release. A feature release will get the features out, but a product launch is more about explaining what exactly the product does to the right people, to the customers, to the analysts, to the press, figuring out how to price it, figuring out how to take orders, figuring out how to service a customer once a customer buys a product, customer support, and so on and so forth. But this is the biggest misconception a lot of people have. And in today's world, majority of the companies you started are working for are product companies, right? So a product launch is pretty much the company's launch. Your product strategy is the company's strategy. So think about it, which means it's not just about one department working on it, it's the entire company together focusing on a single goal. I want to do a quick brainstorming session. I'll go to a regular mode here. Just what do you think needs to be true, or what decisions do you think you need to make for a product launch? Pricing. Okay. Who is it for? So I'll say target audience. Use cases you're trying to solve, so the actual features that you have designed or you're planning to design. Positioning and messaging to tell the story, what category you want to go after. Sorry? Marketing. Can you double click on that? What do you mean by marketing? Okay, so let's break that. Announcement, deliverable, let's say that's kind of marketing collateral. And KTG, yeah. Ease of deployment. I'll just say deployment for now. So that's a decision you need to make. How do you actually deploy the product, get the customer up and running once they buy the product? The actual product, that's probably crucial. We'll go to the next ones. We got 8 there. The date, yeah, so when? Let's say a launch date. Very, very crucial. Internal training for who? So sales and support training, yeah. Other?
Testing.
For testing for what? For the actual features?
Yeah.
So features testing.
Goals.
What do you mean?
Like how are you going to measure success of your launch?
Yeah. So launch goals and metrics. Very good. What about partnerships? Any thoughts? Who do you want to be along with you when you're announcing your product? Wouldn't it be nice to say Google is supporting you for this, or you're exclusive with Apple, some of the big names? And so on and so forth. You get an idea there. So it just gives you an idea of how many different things you need to decide. So one of the basic things in product launches is to start very early, of course. Let's go with this. And the framework you want to think about is you want the entire organization to think about what the key objective is. So think of a product launch as your organizational readiness to do three main things. The first one is to be actually able to sell the product, and that is probably the biggest one. That includes pricing, messaging, collateral, sales readiness. What do you need to do to actually sell the product? Packaging. The second big one is take orders. A lot of times the second one is the one that's missed by product managers and engineers because you don't hang out with the legal team or the operations team. A taking order actually means, can you process an order? What kind of sales agreement do you need to have? What kind of privacy clause do you need to display to the end user? And how do you actually process it? How does the licensing work? A customer buys it, how do you enable the license for the customer? All that stuff should be in the second bucket. And the last one is serving your customers. Now that someone said support, right, for the features. Once a customer, or easier deployment. Once a customer buys the product, how do you actually enable them, and what do you expect them to use, or what do you expect their questions to be once it's launched? And I'll let you read this, but for how many of you work for companies that are smaller than 50 people? Okay, almost more than half the class, right? So one challenge for you is everyone wears several hats, and everyone's trying to do different things, and everyone has probably 5 conflicting P0s and P1s. P0 must have priority, P1, the top priority, and so on and so forth. So the key thing, one of the soft goals of a product launch is to rally the entire company about a single goal and objective. So when I joined Duo, that was 3 years ago, we were about 70 people, and they've been trying to launch a product almost for a year. But they were not able to, they were releasing features, but the product launch never happened because there were conflicting priorities across the company. The web team wanted to do a new website, the sales team was doing new enablement, the partner team wanted to get into MSPs, the product team was satisfying by developing new features based on customer requirements. Everyone is busy, everyone is doing the right thing, but no one said, this is the number one objective for the next 3 months. So one of the first things we did, as a lot of engineers do, is we generated a code name. And we said, okay, the new code name is going to be Perimeter. Perimeter is going to be launched, and the product was a cybersecurity product. It's on the PCs that the Perimeter is disappearing or changing the way it was in the past, right? And we had a kickoff, and the next thing you know, the entire company had MBOs, the management objectives for the next 2 quarters around Perimeter. They were doing their things. The website is getting updated, but it was all around a new website for the Perimeter launch, new sales training for the Perimeter launch, and it became a successful launch for us. In terms of the things you want to think about, there's a lot of stuff. Some of these we talked about in the brainstorming session. Some other things in this, the bottom right, second one, people and roles, very, very crucial to define who does what, especially if you're 50 people. It's very crucial to say, you own the website live, making sure it's going to go live. You own product testing, and define the roles well in advance, and let them own that, and communicate with the rest of the company that this person owns website live launch. This person owns pricing and packaging. Other stuff that we did not talk about is launch stage. Where do you want to actually launch it? Is there an internal company event, an annual kickoff? Or if you're a consumer product, electronic product, you want to launch it at the CES show. If you're doing something for marketing automation, maybe Dreamforce is the right stage for that. But for this session, we'll focus on these 4. Before we get into these 4, any questions, comments about the other things, the sales training, the things we're not going to cover today, Plan B, launch stage? Any comments, questions about other stuff?
As far as metrics, do you put specific KPIs, or how do you define metrics as a goal?
Sure. So for the metrics, the best metrics I've seen are around 3 or 4-fold. One is actual selling the product. Are you able to sell the product? Let me actually start with the wrong metrics. Number of press impressions. That's a great metric, but it's a means to an end. It's not the end goal. All right, you got 155 press impressions. So what, right? The first thing for a lot of SaaS products is number of signups and number of deals that are getting converted or to actual revenue. And then the actual deployment is another good metric. We started measuring at Duo something called feature efficacy. Features that customers are buying, how much are they using it, and how often are they using it? And eventually, obviously, the goals are around revenue and then retaining the customers and retaining the subscription and so on. So you probably want to draw a timeline and say, what is the immediate goal? Probably you want to start with press goals. Everyone should be able to articulate what's new in the company, what's new in the product, the value, followed by signups and so on and so forth. Cool. So how do you actually do the launch planning? Bad stuff always happens by design or sometimes lack of design. But the most important thing is obviously to start early. Any guess on when you want to start? If let's say date T is the actual launch date, when would you do the launch planning kickoff? 30 days before, 100 days, 1 year? All over the place, okay? There's no sweet answer there, but the one thing you want to think about is the when versus what. So what is driving your launch? If you want to decide when you want to launch it, make that the main deadline. And then you can figure out what actually needs to be launched. Examples for that, again, we need to have a launch at CES. And now you work backwards to say, what is the minimum set of features I can package to actually have a practical launch at CES? I work for a security company, and RSA conference is the largest security conference. We have about 40,000 people coming to San Francisco to Moscone. So it's a great stage to launch a product. So we put that as our benchmark, saying we need to launch a product at RSA conference in 2018. So what can we package? What can we start working from now? You get the idea. Dreamforce, if it's a marketing automation. Some things can be seasonal. So if you're doing let's say a toy, you definitely want to launch it at Thanksgiving or before Christmas, right? Way before Christmas. Otherwise, you're missing the whole cycle. If you're doing winter sports equipment, you definitely want to launch it in fall. So the when is more and more becoming the key point that you want to decide on. The other way to look at it is the what. So you probably want to say, I want a clicker that actually works. So it doesn't really matter when I launch it, but I can launch it as soon as it works. The challenge with what is feature creep. You would say, because a lot of us want perfection, and we would say, oh, one more feature, oh, this has to have this level of capacity, otherwise I'm not going to launch it. And the risk by taking the what approach is, you almost never launch it. Somebody has to say, it has to be done by October 31st. From a launch framework perspective, the first thing is to start early, and this is where we'll probably do a quick exercise. If people need pens. Yeah. So the most important thing is the executive summary, and this should be designed by somebody called a launch captain. And who's the launch captain? The person who has the maximum context about the customer, the product, and the company. If there's no one single person like that in your company, maybe pull 2 or 3 people and try to do this workshop. And this is the first thing you want to do before thinking about the launch and so on. So what does it actually involve? If you already have defined roles, PMs and PMMs, product marketing managers or product managers, it's a combination of them. But you definitely want people who have a full clarity on what the customer wants, what you're trying to build. So the first one is what's new and what exactly is the value. That's pretty straightforward. Is it a new product? Is it a new feature? What exactly is the value? And you don't want essays or paragraphs for this. You just want literally 2 lines. Is it a new feature? Is it a new product? Sometimes is it a new integration with another partner? And as I'm going through this, you can start writing it. We'll also take 5 minutes off after I go through this slide. The second one is, what's the headline? Let's say you have a magic wand and you are given the option to actually write the headline on Wall Street Journal. What is the headline for your launch press release? Are you going to introduce a new phone that is revolutionizing the world? Is it a new gadget? Is it 10 times better than anything else in the world? Is it the best clicker in the world that's available for 50 cents or $1? So whatever the headline is. The next one is the launch goals. This is a tiering you can do internally. This is something we practice internally. I've seen it practiced at Cisco, EMC, all the big companies. Tier A launch is the biggest launch. You probably want to do a tier A launch, maybe 1 a year or 1 every 2 years. That's when you're actually launching a new product. There's change in pricing, packaging, entire sales enablement and certification. It's a major event for the whole company. Tier B, a bunch of new features, significant. Every customer should be knowing about it. Sales should be trained on it, maybe not certified. Tier C, maybe some features into one edition. The rest of the world doesn't really need to know about it. And it's important to classify what tier launch you're working on so that you have the right expectations around it. And the next one is pricing and packaging. We'll go deeper into that later today in this session. But the thing you want to think about is how can you use pricing and packaging as a key differentiator? For example, we designed single sign-on as a feature. But if we designed single sign-on as a separate product, we would be competing with existing players and will probably lose because we just started working on it. So what we decided from a packaging perspective is we want to add that as a feature of our existing platform because it's only good enough, but it's not best in class. And now we have customers buying it because it comes with the bundle and it's good enough. They want to try it first, and then if it doesn't really satisfy their needs, they want to go for a full-fledged, full product. So using packaging as a core differentiator is pretty critical there. What is a launch date? CES show, Dreamforce, and why is that a launch date? One caveat with this, we experienced this internally, is marketing had a huge budget for RSA conference. And that was the biggest lead generation event. And we combined launch with it. And people were burnt out, extremely burnt out, because they had so much of focus on RSA conference, and then we had the launch. So lessons learned, moving forward, what we did was separate those two at least by 2 weeks. Now we do a launch 2 weeks before RSA conference so that the company can focus on the launch at the conference. What does the internal readiness plan look like? So at least T-10 or T-5, you probably want to do a check. That's like a rocket launch. The best is for one of the product people to do the full testing. For example, if it's a SaaS product, act as if you're a regular customer, do the search engine, search online. Your results should be on the first page or the second page, or an ad shows up, and go through the whole workflow and identify what the gaps are. Extremely valuable. All it takes is maybe an hour, and you'll find ways or places where things get stuck. We found our things getting stuck where we created a sign-up form, but did not think about where the information is going to, because engineering built the sign-up form, and sales was using Salesforce, and the systems were not connecting. And it sounds pretty obvious, but we missed on it. And when we did the testing, T-5 is when we found it, because we were not seeing any leads getting generated on Salesforce.com, but the engineering spreadsheet or table was getting filled. What is a customer communication plan? And you want to think about, what do you want to tell your existing customers? What do you want to tell net new prospects? And what do you want to tell people who are in the middle, who are actually trying your product? And the communication has to be definitely separate. You want to customize it based on who the target audience there is. And then a launch, one of the key things is the launch is not the end goal. It's just a milestone. So what happens after the launch, 30, 60, 90 days? It goes back to the measurements of our objectives you want to track. But what does a plan look like after the first 30 days and 60 and 90 days? So I'll give you a few minutes to fill the form or the worksheet you have. Right, so where are you getting stuck? Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about pricing and packaging. Where else are people getting stuck or having challenges thinking about it? A good way to look at it is you can start maybe with the end goal, which is to make money in a sustainable fashion, and then work from there on. What needs to be true for someone to buy your product and then actually renew it next year? But maybe let's start with buying the product. And one analogy we use internally a lot is forest, trees, branches, leaves, and leaves on leaves, and so on and so forth. But whatever works for you, think from that analogy perspective. You can think about a forest level goal, which is, hey, we need to make sustained revenue, maybe profitable and sustained revenue. And then a tree level goal and a branch level goal, and so on and so forth. Some of the goals we thought about in the past, we need to have a first mover advantage in a specific area. So that was an objective, but it's not the end goal. The end goal is by having a first mover advantage, you're going to actually get better market share and eventually make more money. Other areas where people are getting stuck?
One thing I noticed is there's no messaging.
Yeah, so that's kind of the second one. What's the headline? But we'll talk detail about messaging, but good observation, yeah. What is the key story that you want to tell? Yeah, cool. So pricing and packaging we'll cover, and messaging is another thing we'll cover. That's actually the second worksheet you'll get on the messaging side. Typically when we do launches, the one I've seen a lot of people get stuck is around messaging, because it's not ones and zeros. Everyone has an opinion, and you can do it in so many different ways. Pricing, you can show a bunch of data and eventually say, my dart went to number 2, so I'm going to make it $2, right? So other things you want to think about, once you have this plan, what do you do immediately after that? Don't do the kickoff plan right after you have this doc. Socialize it. It's basic human psychology. If I tell you that, hey, we're going to do this, your immediate reaction is, you did not talk with me. Why are you making a decision and letting me know that I just need to do this? Are we not a team? Are we not being a team player? And so on and so forth, right? You want everyone in the company to feel that this is their goal. This is their project. Very, very crucial. So what does socializing mean? Just talk about it for 2 minutes. Hallway conversation, coffee. Hey, I'm thinking about a launch. What do you think we should say? And one of the key things I learned is don't tell them, we're going to price it $5. Ask them, hey, I'm working on pricing. What do you think we should do? And then they say $25 and say, why? Like, what's your logic? Before telling them 5, get their opinion. Once you tell them 5, they'll either do 2 things. They'll completely fight with you, or will never tell you that they thought it's actually $25. And you lose a very valuable feedback point, right? So socialize the plan, ask questions, and then have the kickoff plan. Organize the launch kickoff. Launch kickoff, typically you want it at least 90 days before the launch date. Even if it's a tier C launch, it's always good to have a launch kickoff, but you can skip the weekly syncs or bi-weekly syncs, because the whole company needs to know that something big is happening in 3 months. So have a launch kickoff, but you can skip the intermediate steps. Slack, yeah. In fact, so I work in our San Mateo office. We have locations in Ann Arbor, London, and Austin. So I use Slack all the time. One thing I observed, Slack, and we also use Zoom or Slack video. So if you're socializing things, make sure it's a video call. You can see their facial expressions. In our company, we have a rule that you always do a video call. So we actually turn the cameras on. If someone's not doing it, we ask them, are you not video ready? So it just creates a different level of communication and connection, right? Yeah. Cool. And the weekly launch syncs, that's probably required for tier A launches, but it's up to you. You can decide whether you want it weekly or bi-weekly. The thing is, obviously, Excel is the best tool there. We make spreadsheets. Don't make it 45 columns. Keep it simple. Don't make it overwhelming. Start small and let people fill those things. One thing we do is every task has 3 things. Not started, conditional formatting, it's red, work in progress, yellow, and it's complete, 90% complete and full complete. Because website live is not complete until the final day, but you don't want it to be yellow all the time. So 90% complete is light green, full complete is dark green. So those are the 4 different gradients we have for the spreadsheet tracking. The second bullet from the last, so that happens almost for every launch. The way feature creep happens, the launch creep also happens. You tend to say, oh, we're going to get on Wall Street Journal. We're going to do analyst reviews. We're going to have 5 demos. We'll probably get 5 customers doing the quotes. So don't make it too big that it's going to fail no matter what. Try to simplify things. Especially in the last 30 days, if something is not started, try to ask the critical question of, is it really needed for us to have a successful launch? If no, take it off. It's one of the best things to do because it takes stress off. It's better to say we're going to do only 15 things and we are green on 80% of them. That's a better approach than saying we're going to do 85 things and we are green on 80% of them, right? So try to take things off. The way we do is we have P0s, P1s, and P2s. P0, again, a must-have. It's a showstopper. P1 is the net new thing, and P2 is a nice-to-have. P3, almost you never get to it, right? If it just falls on your face, that's good. The last one, super important for even small companies because you're moving so fast. Make decisions and provide clarity in communication. Whether those are emails, Word documents, Slack calls, Zoom calls, hallway conversations. You cannot, I cannot stress enough on communication, but make sure you make decisions and communicate to the whole company. If you decide on pricing, let everyone know about it. And for the launch kickoff, who to invite? Almost your entire company. Just have one lead from each of these groups. If you don't have these departments, think about who actually owns it. Things you miss sometimes, HR. We did miss HR in one of our launches in the past. And they organized 3-day manager training the week of the launch because they did not know we were launching it. And we paid a lot of money to the training firm. And we did not cancel it. So everyone screamed the launch week. They're like, and everyone was multitasking, sitting in the training. It's not a good scenario to be in. They'll also plan on hiring plans, right? So do you want net new class or net new folks to join that week, before, later, so on and so forth? What we did was once HR knows that launch is going to happen, let's say XYZ date, we invite even prospects, candidates who we are interviewing to the launch event so that they get a feel of the company and the strategy. So that's a good reason to involve HR there. Same with IT and so on and so forth. Any questions on this? Cool. So messaging, probably the toughest one for a launch. One of the best things to do is when you think about a feature, so I use Evernote personally, and I have an ongoing Evernote called messaging, and I save it on my favorites on the left. So anytime I get an idea, I write about it. Or sometimes you are reviewing a feature with a customer, and the customer says something you never thought about, you just write it. So over time, you're collecting different talking points. Sometimes an engineer might say, give an awesome analogy for the feature, right? So start collecting those things. If you say, I'm going to work on messaging on Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, it might not work. So it's an ongoing process. Keep an active eye on what is the right story you want to tell. So I'm not making this shit up. Just read it. NASDAQ OMX Corporate Solutions helps public and private companies and organizations minimize risk, maximize efficiency, and increase transparency with a fully integrated, comprehensive suite of products and services that delivers market intelligence and improves communications effectiveness with key constituencies. That is actually from a press release from NASDAQ. It's a multi-million-dollar acquisition. They bought a business unit from Thomson Reuters, and this is what they wrote. I'm like, what? What just happened? Who approved it? And how did it actually get into the press, right? I mean, you can break it in so many different things. First, like the target audience, public and private companies and organizations. Like, who else are you making it for? Right? That's everybody. Minimize risk, okay, that's very, very specific. Maximize efficiency, I get it all, right? Increase transparency, so you get the idea. It's extremely hard, and this thing happens more so at large companies. Because you as a product manager or product marketing manager owns messaging, and you send it to your VP, they give you a bunch of changes, you send it to the VP of PR, then it goes to the CEO, CTO, everyone adds their opinions. You think you are the minion in the front of the line, in the front line, and you say, I'll accept all the changes, and it looks like this. So make sure you have a single owner for messaging. That's extremely crucial. And you want that person to be the one who's closest to the customer. So product managers or product marketing managers. And obviously you want them to be thinking about the value, not the feature. You want them to know the market, what others are telling, what story they're telling, but have a single owner. All the feedback, collect all the feedback, but those are opinions from people. Those are not things you need to add to your messaging statement. So,
have you ever used an outside firm for doing messaging exercises inside of your company? So they corral together, or is that a waste of time?
As a startup, they're expensive. Yes, we used it, but not at Duo, at other companies. EMC has a budget of maybe $500 million for marketing, right? So the worksheets I'm going to give you actually are pointers I learned over time from these messaging workshops. One of the things is this framework. So this was actually taught by a consultant. I've seen this work really, really well. This is not the thing you would put on the website. This is something internally you work on. So pull in 4 people, 1 from marketing, 1 from engineering, one, maybe your CEO and you, and try to work on this. And you can start with a spreadsheet. So the way you want to think about it is for the target market. So what exactly is the target market you're going after? XYZ, your company, is the frame of reference. So what is the category you want to position yourself as? I'm a mobile app. I'm a marketing automation tool. Or you're a cybersecurity product. The point of difference, what is your claim? What is your unique differentiator? We are the easiest to use. You're the fastest to work on. We are the most economically friendly, or the cheapest product, most affordable product. And the last one is justification. What is the proof point? Why are you the fastest? Why are you, the have the best quality than anybody else? So I'll give you a couple of examples on this. This is back in the day for Amazon. For people that like to read, so that's the category, that's the target audience. For people who like to read, super simple, straightforward. Amazon.com, XYZ company, is the online bookstore. That's the category you're trying to establish your company as. Is the best place to purchase books. That's your unique differentiator, a value proposition you're making, your claim, because of its selection. So you're correlating the last two. So you're pretty much stating that anyone who has the best selection becomes the best place to purchase books. Make sense? So very simple. And again, this is not going to be on your website, but it will provide you the clarity in terms of how to approach messaging. Another example, for deadline-oriented businesses, so very crucial, the first one, it is for businesses. That doesn't mean they're going to say no to me if I go personally to FedEx, but their primary target customer is organizations and enterprises. FedEx is the overnight package delivery system or service that is most reliable. They have a bunch of differentiators, but their claim, the primary claim they want to make is most reliable because of the sophisticated package tracking system. So again, that's the unique thing they can prove. And if you come with this framework, the next thing you can do is say, what are all the things that you can show as proof points for the last one? That's where you can say we are AI or machine learning backed, or we have people with PhDs in logistics. For the most reliable, you can, in the business world, everything comes to 3 things basically. You're the fastest, cheapest, or best quality. So quality, pace, or time to value, and the cost. And try to modify that to whatever your market segment is. So this is more of a top-down approach in terms of messaging. You're literally 4 people sitting on around a table and cooking this up. There's a second approach. Let me give these templates to you. More worksheets. Where this is more of a bottom-up approach that you can do. This is harder to do. And you need people who actually spoke with customers and knows the market to actually do this. A lot of times you get stuck because you don't have the answers. It's totally okay. You go back and do the research. One of the first things, this is more applicable for B2B, enterprise companies and products and services. The first thing you want to start is, when your product does not exist, how is the problem getting solved? We call it the before scenario. So someone's doing something about it, whether it's manual, they're using something else, or it's not getting solved at all, but there is something happening. What is the before state? So start with that. And if your product does not exist and the problem is getting solved in a different way, what are the negative business consequences for the end customer? So an example, let's say if you take marketing automation products, the top one before scenario is they're using spreadsheets, they're doing manual entry, they are doing manual reporting. The negative business consequence, a lot of errors, so they don't have real value or real insights into the data. It's taking them 2 weeks to create a report, so they're not able to make fast decisions. So that's the workflow you want to go through. And then what does the after scenario look like? Once the customer deploys your product, how do things look like? So they're going to move faster, the business value of things. And then what are the positive business outcomes? So an example, again, with the marketing automation is your product integrates with Salesforce.com. It automates reporting. Let's say there are very few errors. And obviously, you can push in machine learning to say it'll do predictive analytics. All those things are features, geek talk. So what does it actually mean from a business value perspective? Your customer can make decisions faster. or your customer can adjust the price real time and acquire more audience. The next one is required capabilities. This is probably the thing you want to start when you're designing the product per se, right? So for the solution to work, what are the things that need to be true in an ideal world? Again, with the same example, it has to integrate with Salesforce.com, and it has to integrate within half an hour. The reports should be presented within 30 seconds. So those are kind of the required capabilities. What needs to be true for the solution, for the ideal solution? You might not achieve all of them, but you're thinking about what's the ideal state look like. And then what are the metrics you want to present? For us, as an example, we compete, or we actually replace the products from RSA and Symantec. One of the key metrics we have is RSA, the big security company, takes about 2 weeks to do a custom integration if you want RSA to work on Oracle applications, for example. And they charge professional services for those 2 weeks, like $40,000. Our internal goal is every application should be integrated in less than an hour, and there should not be professional services involved. So that is the metric. So the metric is any integration in less than an hour. And how you do it? So we do it based on APIs. And what are the things that only you do? That is a unique differentiator. So how you do it better? We do it better because we have auto correction. You cannot do wrong on coding. We have drag and drops. We have automated testing, so on and so forth. And the last one is, what are your proof points? The proof points can be around, we have XYZ customer using it and saying this. We have an analyst, Gartner, or somebody saying this. So case studies, metrics, data points. If you're saying that it's faster or cheaper, as in you can save on money, you definitely have to have a percentage number. You cannot say this is faster and just leave it there. How fast? I mean, is it 2x, 10x, 20x? Have you done any metrics? A lot of times you don't have the numbers, so open a spreadsheet, use your best assumptions, create a model. It's better to say we reduce costs by 85% than saying we don't know, we really don't know, right? So get a number, make your best assumptions, and stick with the model. And if someone says, how did you come up with the number, show them your model. Even better, if you have time, talk to the customers to get the right data points. Another example, we made up a number. The 85% is actually something we made up internally. We said you can save up to 85% on costs once you deploy Duo replacing RSA. And the key is up to. It's not 85%. We said up to. So that's our model. And we collected data. We collected data on based on customers deploying it, based on our assumptions, and you literally make up a model. We said a 5,000 people organization with about 8 offices with these kind of applications, with these kind of user set, how much would it cost using Duo? How much would it cost using RSA over a time of 5 years? Because when we did it for 1 year, it did not match well. So we extended the timeline to make the number look better. And then the last one, if you have sales teams, actually everybody probably should have sales teams. Sometimes they are your website if you're doing e-commerce or complete online. But what are the discovery questions you want to ask? So these are the things. You have the template. Maybe you want to take 5 minutes to actually go through it.
So a lot of these are comparisons against an existing product or an existing way of solving it. How does that differ if the existing way of solving it is do it yourself? Because I've found that a lot of times you run up against, well, it's going to cost you this much salary to do this. And then somebody says, no, it's really not, because they just don't want to acknowledge the time that they spend. Yeah. So I actually learned one of the same exact question from one of our sales guys, Harnur. We do two-factor authentication. There's a free product from Google called Google Authenticator. And we see that a lot in the SMB space. A customer asked Harnur, I can use Google Authenticator. And Harnur said, please go ahead, but that's going to be your life for the next 2 months. If you have nothing else to do, please go ahead. It's a pretty good product. So a lot of times you want to think about the time it takes for do-it-yourself kits and the maintenance of it. And if something wrong happens, what are the negative consequences of that? In the security side of things, one thing we talk about is you're not an expert in it. You might think the control is enforced, but in reality it's not enforced. Because you're not an expert, you don't know about it. So the negative consequence is you might actually get breached. So why do you want to do it yourself? You wouldn't perform a surgery on yourself, right? One more question. How does this exercise of the first one differ if you are establishing a category rather than entering.
Yeah. So if you're establishing a new category, you want to focus on the top one, the primary problem you're trying to solve. It is still getting done somehow or the other. So that's why it's critical to think. Don't get bounded by, oh, Gartner said you are ABC. Just think about the problem you're trying to solve. How is the customer doing it before? And talk to the customers. That's the best probably thing you can do. Ask them. And that's your discovery call, right? The first time you talk with a customer about your features, you ask them, how are you solving this problem today? Maybe they don't solve the problem at all. So you ask them, why not? And they say, it's never a priority, or we're waiting for a breach to happen, something on those lines. Right? And at large companies, when I was with EMC, this was a 2-day workshop. So we had everyone come into a room. We had similar templates. Went almost half an hour into each of these line items. People disappeared, formed into groups, like 5 people teams, 5 different teams. Everyone filled it, came back, gave their presentations. So that is something you can do internally in your company. As in, take people, make them form into 3 groups, have them work in their sessions, do a presentation. So it's kind of a half a day or a full day workshop on messaging. But extremely crucial, because this is how you do the messaging, which will eventually trickle down into your web content, sales collateral, press release. After this, what you would work on is something called a core messaging document, which again should be a 1-pager or at the max 2-pager. You can do the same format. And another thing you can add to that is the 50-line description, 100-line description, 300-line description, and stick with the template for the entire launch.
Could you go into the discovery questions a little bit more? I guess I'm kind of at a loss of much later.
Sure. So I'll give you an example. Discovery questions are things you want to ask the customer before you present your solution. So we do a feature where we can give you visibility into all your mobile devices. We do it better than anybody else. So the discovery question for that is, how are you managing mobile security today?
How's that different than before scenarios or negative consequences? You're still thinking about the consumer's current state.
Yep. So a discovery question is something you would actually ask a customer that you would eventually go into your sales enablement. The before scenario is something for you to work on. That is more for internal template. So in this example of mobile security, a before scenario is customers do not have visibility into mobile devices. A negative business consequence is, or a before scenario is some of these devices are insecure. A negative business consequence is if they fail an audit, they'll have to pay fines. There's actually cash implications. If they get a breach, they'll have to pay fines, and it's a crisis. They lose almost a month or 2 months. So those are the negative consequences. After scenario, once they deploy Duo, they'll have full visibility into all their environment. They can pass compliance and so on. Positive business outcomes from that, they can avoid breaches, so better risk management. They can pass the regulations or compliance requirements, which can get them into new markets. You get the idea, right? So on and so forth. You get to the bottom one. The discovery question is something your sales guy would ask the customer. So maybe a good question to start with is, do you allow mobile devices in your company? And typically the answer we get is, we really don't, but we see them everywhere. I carry 2. So that's the answer. Oh, you smile, and then you ask, so how are you managing security around it? One of the key things with discovery questions is you want to avoid yes or no questions or metric questions as much as possible. For example, do you use a mobile security product today? The answer is no. All right, so what do you say after that? Instead, a better question to ask is, can you walk me through the process you're currently following to secure your mobile devices? An open-ended question. Typical market research stuff, right? When you're doing qualitative research, you want open-ended questions. So the last topic, pricing and packaging. And I want to actually look at this. There are 3 options for Economist. Anybody reads Economist here? Yeah. Anybody enjoy reading Economist? Okay. Web only is $59 per year. Print only is $125. And then print and web together, $125. How many of you want web only? Wow, no one. Okay. Raise of hands, a few. How many want print only? Nobody. How many want print and web? Okay, so almost majority of the class wants print and web. So web only, this is a scenario 2. Web only, $59. Print and web, $125. Now how many of you want print and web together? Just one hand, a few hands. So this looks stupid, but it made majority of you think about, oh, print and web is an awesome deal. I'll go with that. Just makes you feel like you're getting a good deal. And you don't think about that part of your brain overtakes, do you need that, that product question, right? And you go and make the decision. And end of the day, this whole cognitive sciences, decisions are made based on emotions, and you find logic to justify them. And this is by a professor, Dan Ariely, who does awesome articles and books on behavioral economics. You should check out his podcasts and so on. But this is one good thing to follow. Sometimes you want to introduce a product. Thank you. And the purpose of that product or pricing is to sell another product. It just makes the other one look better. So think about the most valuable product you have, and you probably want to release another edition that might not be right for the entire market, but that is your Cadillac. And so, for example, we have a $3 product, a $6, and a $9. And $9 is the latest one we launched this year. And we know the $9 one is not ready for the entire customer base. It's mainly for SMB and mid-market. But we decided to launch it because people will say, oh, 6 is probably going to be the right one because it's the middle one. I don't want to start with a very basic one. I'll go with the middle one. Right. Just one thing to look at, how people behave and how people think about pricing. The 5 things probably to think about in pricing. The first one is, what is the current alternative to your product cost the customer? So how are they solving so it goes with the messaging template, right? How are they solving the problem today? How much does it cost? And the key question there is TCO, total cost of ownership. Not about the product they're using today, but it's more about the total cost. Time spent, consultants, mistakes, help desk calls, if they have to redo because it's not of high quality, how much does that time, eventually turn into cash and so on and so forth. So the TCO calculation is extremely crucial. You can make your own spreadsheet to calculate the TCO. The second one is using pricing and packaging as a differentiator. So again, the example of SSO I talked about where we have a feature, but we're not ready to get in the market. So we decided that to be a feature. Another classic example everyone can connect with is your mobile phone. Camera is part of this. It's a feature. So you never compare the camera in this with a point and shoot camera, but it's kind of a unique differentiator from a packaging perspective. It sounds very obvious, but that's the thinking that goes through product managers and product marketing folks, right? So what features can you bundle that will make the package look better? And there are options of having add-ons versus having a new edition. So the pros and cons, it's a totally different, it depends on the kind of business you are in and how the market is for your products. The next one is the list price versus street price. Very, very crucial, especially for enterprises or if you're selling B2B. And in B2B, if you grow beyond a certain limit, you get into channel partners or distributors, and they take their percentage and margins. So you can say my product is $10,000 per license, but by the time the customer's money comes to you, it'll be probably $4K after all the discounts and everyone's commissions on top of that, right? One of the big things is enterprises, when you sell to them, it goes through a procurement process, and procurement wants 20% discount no matter what. So if you think your market price should be $100, you probably want to think about how much discount you want to give to the procurement team. A quick example, so let's say a water bottle. It costs me, so I designed a new machinery to make water bottles that look exactly like this, and it's costing me $70 to make this water bottle. How much should I sell it for? It's costing me $70 to sell this, or to make this. How much should I sell it for? $140, $200, okay?
Let's say 3 times the cost.
3 times my cost, so it's costing me $70. He says I should sell it for $210. I'll give it for you. I'll give it to you for $150. You can take it. So that is one of the most common mistake people make. Your cost has nothing to do with the price. If a competitor is able to make this for $5 and is selling for $25, you have to price it around $25, unless you think your stuff is 10x better than that. So the market and the consumer, the customer decides pricing, not your cost. Your cost can only tell you how much money you're going to make. Do you have a real business model or not?
We actually have that problem in specific, where our solution is way more expensive than the ones that are in the market, but they are also way underperforming with our solution. So they are less reliable, more expensive, have more latency, have, well, several issues.
Yeah.
And the question is, if you sell it at a price that they are selling, you'll be bleeding money,
Yeah.
a lot of money. And so how do you cope with that?
So if I say this is ethically sourced, biodegradable, certified, and celebrity endorsed, maybe I can charge $200, right? You're not selling a commodity water bottle, but you are differentiating based on the value you're providing. So it's the same category, but you're trying to create a niche for yourself. But the price, again, the first thing you want to think about price is what is the value I'm providing to the customer and how much can I charge for that, not your cost structure. Keep it simple unless you're Microsoft, because a lot of downstream effects, if you're buying Microsoft products, they give you a 50-page PDF that actually explains how the licensing works. As startups, we don't have that kind of bandwidth or resources or interest. So keep the product super simple. Every time you're creating a new product, you have to create SKUs. Finance needs to work on revenue recognition. If you launch a new product with a price and you end of life it, there will be some customer that will scream, "Oh my God, you're killing me now." You don't want to deal with that stuff. So keep it super simple. Optimize it for the 80%. You don't need to make it all perfect. You'll always have 20% who are going to fight with that model. And the last one is avoid the pricing war. So to your example, definitely don't discount it. Try to find a better niche. Try to find what is unique with your stuff. For example, you said better latency, right? Better performance, and focus on that and charge premium for it. With our product, for example, the first product we launched was $3, and there were market products that are free. Google Authenticator is free. There were $1 products. We did not discount our product. Our sales team was exceptionally awesome. They said, we'll walk away from deals if the customer is not willing to give us $3 per user per month. And we did that. And because of the confidence in the product that it would actually provide that kind of a value. Yeah. Definitely don't go with the price war. Microsoft, especially when you're competing with the big guys, they have deep pockets and they can totally cannibalize the market space there, right? So that's pretty much what I have. And there's another worksheet here somewhere, but this is just a basic template. You can make this yourself. It's just something you want to have for the launch day itself, the final day. And we ran into this issue. We did all the launch planning, and there was confusion 2 days before what happens at what time and who's doing it. So press release went at 9 o'clock, website went live at 9:30, but the features went GA at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that 4 hours gap was a nightmare. So you want to think about, okay, I probably just write down precisely on time. When does the press release go up? What happens at what time for the launch day or the day before the launch? And it's good to have specific names and run through that at least 3 days before the launch before you do it. It's actually the VP of our marketing department that came up with it saying, yeah, but it sounds pretty obvious in hindsight, but we missed on that, right? The last thing I want to give is you're going to make a lot of decisions. You're with very fast-growing, high-paced startups, and the most important thing is if you have strategy half-cooked or 80%, that's okay. Make a decision, move on. The most critical advantage we all have is we can make decisions and execute. We move fast. So that is our core differentiator. We move really, really fast. And when you're making a decision, when you come to a crossroads, think about these two. What is right for the customer, followed by what's right for your enterprise. It's not about product is doing this, marketing's trying to do this, or HR is doing this, engineering said this, and so on. Take all that stuff off and think about what is the right thing for the customer. Does this decision help the customer do anything? And the second thing is what's right for our company in the long term. And if you use these 2 mantras over time, you'll make good decisions. And once you make a decision, obviously communicate. Cool. That's all I have. And if you have any questions, comments, you can feel free to ping me. That's my email address, ashd@duo.com. And thank you all again for attending the session. Thank you.